Good evening, everyone, and welcome to my show titled History with Xerx. I'm your titular host, and today we will be diving into the historical aspects of animation, starring an age old animation technique involving heavy photography and another age old film called Neighbours. Now, let's begin. Neighbours was a 1950s Canadian short film produced by creator, director, and producer Norman McLaren in 1952. The film was an anti-war film used as a form of political messaging against the act of war. Its story was centered around two neighbors and their conflict over a flower. And yes, you heard that right, folks. The main cause of conflict for these two characters was literally a flower. Just look. Dang, the films of early 1900s was a weird time period. Fun to watch though. You sure the flower wasn't just laced with some? No, get out of my show. Back to the film production process itself. The film was produced as a hybrid mix of live action footage with no vocal sounds used, and an interesting technique called pixelation or pixel animation. Today's focus topic. Pixelation animation, or just pixel animation, is an animation technique that involves implementing stop motion techniques to create the movement of live objects from a frame by frame photograph. The term pixelation itself was invented by Grant Monroe, who was an actor in Norman's Neighbour film. Describe how stop motion animation implemented his works, Two Bagatellis, a pair of short pixelation films made before he worked with Norman on the Neighbours film. Early films like Neighbours and Hotel Electrica, live actors and props were utilized for these stop motion movements. By repeatedly photographing the objects' pose and positions, changed slightly to almost completely in each photograph image, photographs are then played in rapid sequence to give the illusion of actual movement. This animation technique basically pioneered the earliest examples of special effects in modern day cinema, allowing for inanimate objects to interact with the characters, environment, or audience in a way that is impossible in real life. And it's gonna remain impossible in real life. Am I right? Right?
Strange things caught on camera at a Ventura restaurant. A bar stool suddenly falls over. A chair mysteriously moves by itself. But what's to blame?
CBS 2's Amy Johnson is live at that restaurant where she went to investigate. What'd you find, Amy?
Well, Pat, the strange furniture movement has plenty of people talking, and while they don't really know what's causing it, they all believe it is happening because, as you saw, it was caught on camera. Watch the bar stools in the middle of the screen as one topples to the floor. The movement caught on a security camera in the middle of the night.
That aside, pixelation has been the vehicle that allowed live characters to communicate with animated characters and is often seen in the form of clay motion, which is basically stop motion animation using clay models. You could all guess that. Whilst we're on the subject of stop motion and pixelation, it really should be stretched that while pixelation animation is a form of stop motion animation, it deals with live subjects like people, while stop motion animation in of itself deals with props, puppets, and generally man-made figures. Okay, with that out of the way, how about we get in some more background into this starting baseline of a movie, Neighbours. As I mentioned earlier, Neighbours was motivated by politics, which was actually quoted from Norman McLaren himself saying, "I was inspired to make Neighbours by a stay of almost a year in the People's Republic of China. Although I only saw the beginnings of Mao's revolution, my faith in human nature was reinvigorated by it. Then I came back to Quebec and the Korean War began. I decided to make a really strong film about anti-militarism and against war." Also, the film originally involved murder of the two men's wives and children. Oh my gosh, and the context of the storyline was all over the flower. Although to be fair, people tend to fight for some really petty reasons. Heck, the past king of Persia ordered his men to whip an ocean because it didn't obey him. And I'm not joking with you, he literally thought he could make an ocean obey him by whipping it as if it were a slave.
A storm destroyed the bridges. King Xerx was furious, but he knew what to do. He ordered his men to give the strait a good whipping. Yeah, I'm not kidding you. All of his men marched down to the water and started whipping the water itself, even throwing some chains in it as well. But laugh all you want, their second attempt was a success. So,
back to the topic at hand. If there are any history enthusiasts among you that are wondering how the film survived the Vietnam War, well, let me just say it's more complicated than that. For you see, the original camera used for the film footage got destroyed, resulting in the film being salvaged from a lower quality positive print camera. It's a shame, really. Now with that said, why don't I inform you of some of Norman McLaren's other pixelation relation projects. After Neighbours, he made the film A Cherry Tale in 1957, which he made using the same implementation of live action footage, pixel animation, different speed photography, and string puppets. And then there's his comedy short film he made for the International Film Festival of Montreal of 1960 called Opening Speech, with Norman Manley himself being the star. With that said, I'm afraid I will have to close off this program soon. But before I do, please allow me to give my final thoughts on this journey into the intricacies of pixelation. I believe pixelation was a very influential and important filmmaking and animating tool that allowed for filmmaking to go to places that would otherwise be impossible to reach and branch out the limitations of cinematography. It helped film workers create the illusion of flight, as well as allowed for seemingly involuntary movement of objects, which allowed for the effective creation of scenes for famous horror and drama-based films, as well as being the base and pioneer for special effects used in films later down the line. The Neighbour film itself being the work to truly highlight and popularize this stop-motion animation technique, which I believed helped to influence the implementation of this technique in later films such as the film Stop, Look and Listen from 1967, Sergeant Swell of the Mounties 1972, Tetsuo the Iron Man in 1989, The Secret Adventures of Tom Thumb 1993, Luminaris 2011, and Fresh Guacamole 2012. Name a few. And with that said, this is where we will have to close. Thank you for joining me on this enlightening endeavor. Tune in next time for more content. Until next video, everyone, I bid you goodbye.
On my mind, not even 1 minute can end up before you come around.